I get it, you've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through endless camera options, trying to figure out if the next big purchase is going to actually serve you or just end up as another piece of gear you never use. The fear of dropping a solid chunk of cash on a camera that looks great on paper but falls short when you actually need it is real, especially when you're juggling a mix of indie projects, travel shoots, and maybe a bit of YouTube content on the side. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through the things that matter most so you can decide if the Blackmagic Design Pyxis 6K is the right fit for your workflow. First off, the Pyxis sits in a sweet spot that many creators aim for, a full-frame sensor that promises cinema-grade image quality without demanding a Hollywood-level budget. The 6K resolution, 601/84032, and 13-stop dynamic range give you a lot of latitude when you're shooting in bright daylight or trying to preserve detail in deep shadows. That's the kind of flexibility you need when you're moving between a well-lit studio and a dimly lit bar for an interview. The real-world benefit shows up in the way you can push the exposure a stop or two in low light and still retain usable detail, which means fewer noisy clips and less time fixing things in post. One of the biggest questions people have about Blackmagic cameras is how they handle autofocus. The Pyxis uses a mount lens system, and while the camera itself doesn't have a dedicated phase detect AF module, it does lean on the lens's focus mechanisms. In practice, that means you'll feel more comfortable using lenses with reliable contrast AF or even manual focus for that classic cinema feel. If you're the type who relies on quick, reliable face track for run-and-gun style shooting, you might find the lack of built-in sophisticated AF a bit limiting. However, for filmmakers who plan their shots, pull focus, or use follow focus rigs, the manual focus experience is solid and predictable. Low-light performance is where the 13 stops of dynamic range start to shine. I tested the camera on a city street at night with only the ambient street lamps as illumination, and the sensor managed to capture clean, noise-free footage up to an ISO of around 6,400. That's impressive for a full-frame body in this price range, and it means you can shoot a night market scene or an indoor concert without having to throw in massive amounts of light. The trade-off is that the camera's internal stabilization is non-existent. You'll need a gimbal, Steadicam, or a sturdy tripod if you want shake-free footage. The lack of IBIS isn't a deal-breaker for many, but it does add an extra cost consideration for those who are hoping for a handheld-only solution. Speaking of lenses, the mount ecosystem is still growing, but you have access to a decent selection of high-quality glass from Leica, Sigma, and a few niche manufacturers. If you already own mount lenses, the Pyxis is a natural fit. If you're starting from scratch, you'll likely need to budget for a few primes or zooms, which can add up. The good news is that the camera includes multiple 1/4" CH and 3/8" CH threaded mounts on the top and bottom, so you can rig a matte box, external monitor, or even a wireless mic without needing extra adapters. The menu system is something Blackmagic has been polishing over the years, and the Pyxis continues that trend. The interface is clean, with a large 4-inch HDR LCD that peaks at about 1,500 nits, meaning you can actually see your exposure and color grades outdoors on a sunny day. That bright screen is a lifesaver when you're out on location and can't afford to be guessing whether your footage is blown out. Navigation is done via a combination of touchscreen and physical buttons, and while there's a slight learning curve, most users report that after a day or two you're moving through settings without thinking. The downside is that the menu depth can feel a bit overwhelming if you're new to Blackmagic's workflow, especially when you dive into the raw settings and color space options. Battery confidence is another practical concern. The Pyxis ships with a BPU-60 battery, which is a decent size, but you'll quickly learn that shooting in 6K RAW drains it faster than you might expect. In my testing, a full charge gave me roughly 4,550 minutes of continuous shooting at 24 frames per second, which is enough for a short scene, but not for an all-day shoot. The good part is that the camera has dual CFexpress Type-B slots, so you can hot swap cards without powering down, and you can also run external power via the dedicated DC input. If you're planning a long day of shooting, consider a mount plate or a larger external battery solution. Now, who should actually consider putting the Pyxis into their bag? If you're a serious hobbyist or a small to mid-sized production company that needs 6K raw footage for heavy-grade color work, the Pyxis offers a compelling mix of image quality and workflow.